Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Niomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. In this episode, we're going to do a recap of my interview with Billy Wauhop from Anytime Fitness. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Billy Wauhop. He is the franchise owner and club manager, along with his wife, Toby, for Anytime Fitness in Bunbury. And great guy, has some really great things to share in the interview. And I think skipping through to the one thing that I loved the most was towards the end of the interview when he was talking about kind of things that we all need to kind of keep us balanced, right, and focused and traveling along in probably a better wellness space. And those things were creativity, being active, and also having that reflection or wind down time. And I'd never really heard it put like that before, but that really resonated with me. And I think sometimes, especially when we're busy and we're getting caught up in the grind, we might be focused a little bit more on, going out and doing some exercise because people tell us it's great for us, or, doing a meditation and sitting down and being reflective because that's going to be great for our mind. But the element that really got me was that creativity. Right? Because when we're being creative, that brings out like our inner child and that brings out the fun. So having the movement, having the reflection or the quiet space to sit in, but also making sure we're having fun. And that to me was one of the biggest takeaways from our conversation in the interview. And it was a bit of fun catching up with Billy. So we did bring out a little bit of quirky in each other, which was great. I mean, it was mostly professional, but that's what it's important to do, especially with the relationships that you have, is find the fun and the joy in those, right? And as a leader, sometimes we can get caught up in the day-to-day or in the process or trying to get the end game and making things happen, and we forget to have the fun along the way. And there's an actual local site that I'm doing some work with, a local company, and one of their mottos is that for their team, the little requirements or their team rules, and one of them is laugh often, right? Creating space where there's laughter, and that kind of fits into that same element of having creativity and having fun along the way, because there's only one way, right? We only get to live this lifetime once. So we may as well enjoy the journey as we're going along and enjoy ourselves along the way. So Billy did in the interview, when we started having a chat and we were talking about, why did he buy a business? That a lot of people find it easier just to work for someone, be employed, and there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot of security around that. And me knowing myself, starting your own business is really risky, right? There's, even though you can plan and you can forecast and things go away, there's so many things that can come into play that can affect that. And he kind of, said that one of those main things there was his need to provide some security, right, for himself, and to provide some sort of career path that would give him that that self-satisfaction for himself and for Toby, his wife. So also giving his wife some space to move into, because she'd had a career in the forces and was coming out of that. And it was giving them something they could both work on together, and they could both have, their work-life balance or counterbalance, as I like to say, but they could set up things that would work for them. And so that was worth taking the risk for Billy. And I'm totally glad he did. And I'm sure all of their members are glad that they both did that as well, because they really show up wonderfully in that space. And when I kind of asked him about that showing up and how and why he connected with his members the way he did, some of the things that he did talk about was having solid mentors, right? Having solid mentors. And that's kind of a theme that you'll find through most of the interviews, right? Most of the interviews do talk about that network, those mentors. Some people talk coaches. It's having someone that you can go to, and success leaves clues. People that have been there and done it before, or have been in a space where they're doing it now, they're really great to connect with because they've got some experience that we don't have that we can actually draw from. And they've got maybe some tips and some help that they can give us, because when we're in amongst something, it's kind of like we're stuck in the mud, right? We can only see stuff from our lens. But when we're able to tap into a different resource, someone else that can help us, those people can tend to see as an observer. They've got a better angle, right? They can see things from a different perspective. And so that's really helpful to have that kind of feedback and trying to get some suggestions or techniques or tools that can help us when we're in that space where we've got kind of our blinkers on, right? Because of the space that we're in. Now, what makes a gym successful is understanding people's needs. Right? A gym is all about people, is all about members, and understanding people's needs was something that Billy talked about quite deeply. He talked about being relatable and being authentic and taking the time out to connect. So even if the person was really chatty and wanted to stop for a chat, or they liked to just do their own thing, or someone was new on the machines and wanted a bit of help and support, or someone was a long-term member that just wanted to get on with it, he kind of learned to get to know all of those people and understand what their expectations and needs were from the gym and from him. And acknowledging those people in the space that they wanted to be acknowledged in is a real key element that he spoke about, which I think is amazing. And we kind of went a bit further into even their social media and how their social media is connecting with people. And the video he talked about in there, I actually saw that and I thought it was mint. So if you're listening to this, Toby, double thumbs up. So good. So they actually went to a forum, a function for the Anytime Fitness franchise. And yeah, there was a video of him trying to tie a tie. And I loved it because it did exactly what he said. It showed relatability. It showed authenticity. Right. And it gave that space where other people could relate. And I love how it came back into the gym. So I don't know if he came up with this or Toby did as a justification of why it happened. But, there's people that go into the gym that may not know how to use the equipment. Maybe their first time, maybe a new bit of equipment that they want to try. And by showing that we're all human, they had the probably more courage to come forward and go, hey, I need a bit of help with this. If Billy can't tie a tie, it's okay if I ask how to use this machine. And this goes for all leadership though. Showing our team members that we're not perfect and that we do take risks and not always hit the mark is really important to give them the reassurance that it's okay for them to do that too. Right? If we're putting on this perfectionism or this perfection model, then we're going to have people that will either not connect with us and not actually relate to us or not trust us. Or we're setting up for that modeling for people to come in that are going to be stuck in their comfort zone and not prepared to step outside of that for fear of failing, for fear of falling over and scraping their knee. But if we can show them our knee scabs, then that's going to give them more reassurance that it's okay to do that. And I love that aspect that Billy brought up.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Niomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Niomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgoconsulting.com.au.
He also talked about looking with people and working with people, the importance of that empathy and that transparency and connecting with people that may not be doing so well or may have a challenge or may not be presenting in exactly the same way as they normally do, and recognizing that, right? And having the ability to approach them about that. And also enabling that within his team. Knowing that if his team have stuff that's stopping them from being able to serve at their normal level, but he can make accommodations for that. And creating that safe space where people have the ability to speak up and share those moments. And don't have to go into great detail of exactly what's going on. Like sometimes I'm an oversharer, but not everyone is like that, right? So it's not about sharing every intricate detail, but it is about establishing relationships at a level where people feel comfortable, at least just putting their hand up and going, hey, not my best day. Right. And trying to work with that and trying to not put people under pressure and giving them a space where they can still win, right? So they can still have wins even when they're not at their best. I did ask him his key tips for recruiting because I had a HR background and I did a fair bit of recruiting in my time, right? And I liked the way that he said the key element is to get the right people on the bus. Right, when he does his recruiting. And when he's recruiting, he's employing for a range of different things. So in that environment, he's employing for diversity, right? Having different demographics, different cultures, different ages, understanding that his members are all fluctuating and different, for one. And two, bringing in all of those differences into your team enhances it. It makes it stronger and more powerful. And so I love the way that he actually did that and said that he employs for that diversity and looks at the personality and reviews how his potential candidates interact with others. Sitting back and having a look at how they've engaged in people as they walked in the door. How do they walk? How do they hold themselves? Are they polite? Are they rude? And ultimately, although it wasn't said in the interview, I'm kind of picking up that he's also looking at what sort of energy they're putting out, right? And their body language and their tonality and all of those sorts of things included in there. So one of the major things that he was talking about when he was looking at people and trying to evaluate them for a role, or even setting up some connection with them as a member or even as an employer or employee, even just generally, right, in life. He kind of talked about communication, not just being what you say. And that was a key element for me because I think we miss this. And I think sometimes we can force out the right words or what we think are the right words. We can force that out and think, oh, cool, I've got that covered. But people can feel, right? People know when we're not actually being authentic or they know when we're not at our best. And so it's looking when people are communicating, we're looking at things like what's the body language sitting like? What is the tonality? How are they presenting themselves? There's so much around it. And sometimes it's what people don't say as well that we can look at. So just looking past the verbal elements of communication because it's not always what people say. And then when we started talking about creativity as well, we went on to talk about little, hobbies that we have, like playing the guitar. And I'm sure he's probably a way better guitar player than me, but just having fun with it, right? Having a bash and finding those spaces of creativity, like I said at the start, that can make us and help us bring out the inner child and bring out the fun. And I'd love to know out there, all of those novice guitar players, I don't think I've found one that hasn't at least learnt the riff to Nothing Else Matters, right? The start of Nothing Else Matters. So I really love bringing that up and having a bit of a play with that because that's something that, is relatable as well, right? We've all done that. Well, most of us anyway. If you haven't, look it up and give it a shot. Super easy and it makes you feel really cool. So the last thing I'll just touch on here is a quote that he said that he was given from one of his coaches when he was playing badminton, I think it was. And that was, you win or you learn. And that is such a powerful quote because it's not winning or losing, right? And if you win, you probably still learn, right? But that's not what we're focusing. But we're focusing on knowing that the times that we aren't officially winning or coming in first or hitting the goal the way that we wanted to or having obstacles preventing us from even getting close. It's not an issue really, and it shouldn't be frowned upon because that's where the opportunity from learning comes from. Right? So we're either winning or we're learning along the way. And sometimes we're doing both. And that's the focus that gets us outside of our comfort zone. Yeah, that's the focus that gets us to go in. And the group that I was with today, the corporate group, their EGM actually said, it's failing fast and moving forward. And I love that as well. So we're all going to fail. There isn't anyone I know that hasn't failed. And if they tell you they haven't, they're not being authentic or relatable, right? Or transparent, because it's a part of nature. It's a part of what we do. And, when we're younger, we fall over and we fail. Everyone claps, yay, and we're celebrated. But then as we get older, we fall over and we fail, and then we get criticized for it. If we're a young kid and we drop a glass of milk, we've got parents going, what? Clean it up, and getting upset, and there's emotion attached. And so we end up having this reservation around failing, right? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you had a parent that was just like, oh, you spilled the milk. Oh, that's cool. Let's laugh about it and clean it up, but that's not always the case, because we have our own ways that we respond or react to things, right? And sometimes parents can be under a lot of pressure and things can be happening, and then that can be a straw on a camel's back to help to actually let off the avalanche or the volcano. But, childhood aside, we're not celebrated as much as we should be for trying something and failing. In business, most of the people that I come across in my business are super supportive of me, and I'm really appreciating the contacts I've made and the support I've had. But I know that there are some people out there that if I made a mistake and I tripped up and I failed, they kind of would feel good about that, right? And so that is sometimes in the back of our mind, but we need to let that go, because that's not why we're here. That's not why we're leaders. We're not leaders to be perfect. We're leaders to lead. We're leaders to change lives and impact people and serve and help them grow and develop. And sometimes that means we have to go out of our own comfort zone, right? Sometimes that means we have to go into uncomfortable situations if we want to do the best job that we can in that role as a leader. So that's about it for me for the recap. I hope you really enjoyed the session with Billy. It was a great interview. As I say always, jump on and have a listen, because I'm sure there'll be some really great things that you'll get out of it. And I hope that you keep yourself well, and I look forward to serving you in our next episode. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe, and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.